We are heading into one of the most defining regulatory moments the crypto market has seen since the 2017 ICO crackdown, and the truth is that most investors still don't understand the scale of what's about to happen. The SEC placing crypto privacy on its official December 15th agenda is not some routine update or vague policy session. It's a structured shift in how the United States plans to govern digital assets in 2025 and beyond. When we step back and look at how the SEC has historically operated, from the DAO report in 2017 to the Ripple lawsuit in 2020 to the ETF approvals in 2024, it becomes clear that every major regulatory action is preceded by a very specific type of meeting, and the December 15th session matches the same structure seen before landmark decisions. We are watching the U.S. prepare to reshape privacy rules because pressure has been mounting from multiple fronts. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen's 2021 stance on illicit flows in crypto, FinCEN's 2023 to 2024 reports on anonymity-enhanced transactions, and Senator Elizabeth Warren's continuous push to pass the Digital Asset Anti-Money Laundering Act. When these institutions converge, change tends to come, not slowly, but in a sudden structural wave. But before we look at what's coming, we need to understand why privacy has suddenly become the centerpiece of global discussions. Between 2021 and 2024, illicit activity in crypto, according to Chainalysis, averaged between 0.12% and 0.24% of total volume. These numbers have been statistically insignificant for years, and yet crypto continues to be framed as a threat. The reason has nothing to do with the actual scale of crime, it has everything to do with the growth of cross-chain anonymity. Mixers like Tornado Cash, Blender, and Sinbad became headlines not because of everyday users, but because they enabled high-level sanctioned entities, including North Korean groups like Lazarus, to move funds across chains without friction. In 2022 alone, Lazarus moved over $1.7 billion through Mixers. When global regulators observe this kind of behavior, they begin to look at privacy tools as national security issues rather than optional features. This is exactly why the EU passed the Transfer of Funds Regulation, TFR, in 2023, effectively banning anonymous crypto transactions above €1,000, and why MiCA's 2024 enforcement guidelines require wallet-to-wallet identity for custodial platforms. The US is behind, but catching up, and December 15th is the start.
The SEC's goal in this meeting is not to ban privacy or outlaw self-custody. Instead, the focus is expected to be on creating a unified reporting structure similar to the banking system. Based on the language used in previous SEC roundtables like the December 2022 session on digital asset markets, we can anticipate four major initiatives. First, the expansion of identity requirements for wallet providers and exchanges operating in the United States. Second, new guidance on how decentralized exchanges fall under the Securities Act if they facilitate transactions involving assets deemed securities. Third, clearer boundaries around privacy-enhancing tools, meaning mixers, zero-knowledge layers, and certain bridge architectures may need to comply with standardized AML frameworks. And fourth, the potential introduction of cross-chain reporting obligations, something FinCEN already hinted at in an October 2023 proposal discussing enhanced visibility across blockchain networks. When we combine these possible changes with the ongoing Treasury push for wallet identity rules, it becomes clear that this is not an isolated meeting, but part of a broader restructuring effort. For Bitcoin, the impact is more complex than most investors realize. Since the April 2024 halving, miners have experienced some of the tightest margins in a decade, especially those operating older S9 and S17 rigs. The concentration of mining in the U.S., particularly within Texas, has created a regulatory bottleneck where miners must comply with OFAC sanctions guidelines, whether they like it or not. Bitcoin's transparency is a double-edged sword. On one hand, the blockchain is easy for agencies to track using tools from companies like Elliptic and Chainalysis. On the other hand, attempts to anonymize Bitcoin activity using mixers or privacy tools immediately trigger enforcement. The Tornado Cash case in August 2022 and Sinbad sanctions in 2023 prove this point. December 15th may introduce new expectations for miners, including enhanced reporting when high-volume transfers interact with known mixers or sanctioned addresses. But despite these challenges, Bitcoin's institutional narrative remains strong. BlackRock's IBIT ETF, which launched in January 2024, crossed $20 billion in assets faster than any ETF in history, while Fidelity's fund passed $9 billion by November 2024. Institutions prefer environments with predictable rules, and even if privacy restrictions tighten, Bitcoin stands to benefit from clearer regulatory guardrails.
Solana, however, sits in a very unique position. Its high throughput and sub-second finality have made it the preferred ecosystem for consumer-facing applications in 2024-2025. But that same speed has also attracted private DeFi protocols, cross-chain mixers, and certain anonymity tools that regulators increasingly monitor. The Wormhole Bridge, which connects Solana with multiple chains, has already been the subject of compliance discussions due to the massive liquidity moving through it daily. As regulators push for auditable cross-chain environments, Solana may be required to implement additional layers of compliance, especially for DeFi protocols handling institutional capital. Yet this may ultimately work in Solana's favor, because enterprises like Stripe and Visa have already explored Solana-based settlement solutions due to speed and cost efficiencies. With clear rules, Solana could become the leading infrastructure for tokenized transactions, consumer apps, and real-world asset settlement. The most interesting beneficiary of this regulatory shift, however, is XRP. If we look back at Ripple's behavior over the past decade, the company has positioned itself for a moment exactly like this. Ripple began obtaining global licenses early: MAS approval in Singapore in 2023, registration in Ireland, and expansion into Dubai's VARA framework in 2024, and continued engagement with the FCA in the UK. Even during the U.S. lawsuit, which started in December 2020 and reached partial clarity in July 2023 under Judge Annalisa Torres, Ripple maintained a regulatory-first strategy. As a result, XRP has become one of the only major digital assets explicitly recognized as not a security in retail transactions under U.S. law. At the same time, XRP Ledger's transparent nature, which some traders formerly saw as a disadvantage, now becomes an advantage in a world where regulators want auditability. Institutions searching for compliant settlement rails will naturally gravitate toward assets that can move liquidity quickly, 3 to 5 seconds, at low cost, and without anonymity controversies. This makes XRP extremely well positioned as the U.S. reshapes privacy laws in 2025.
The December 15th meeting will accelerate a trend we've been watching for years: the merging of traditional finance, TradFi, and digital assets under stricter reporting frameworks. And honestly, if we're thinking the same way about how these regulatory shifts reshape the entire crypto landscape, then if this analysis feels on point, hit that like button so we push this information to more people who want clarity instead of hype. Because what's happening now isn't just another small adjustment. This is the groundwork for the next decade of crypto adoption. A true crypto privacy reset between 2025 and 2027 will likely include standardized identity rules for major wallets, enhanced oversight over large cross-chain transfers, risk scoring for DeFi protocols similar to bank stress tests, and new reporting obligations for platforms handling more than a threshold amount per year, potentially something like $10,000, matching traditional CTR limits. Privacy coins like Monero and Zcash could face increased pressure, similar to the 2024 delistings seen across exchanges in Europe. But for mainstream assets used in institutional settlement, XRP, BTC, SOL, clear rules lead to predictable capital flows. Whenever regulators introduce structure, large institutions feel safer entering the market. We saw this in equities after the 2002 Sarbanes-Oxley Act, in derivatives after the 2009 Dodd-Frank reforms, and even in FX markets under the 2017 Global Code of Conduct. Regulation does not kill markets, it professionalizes them. This December 15th meeting also fits into a larger geopolitical shift. Globally, 130-plus countries are developing central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. China's digital yuan has already been tested in cross-border energy transactions in 2024. India's EINR pilot expanded to retail use in 2023. The UAE, Singapore, and Switzerland have been working with the BIS on Project mBridge since 2021. All these initiatives require strong privacy rules, not complete anonymity, but structured privacy, where institutions can audit flows while maintaining user data protections. Ripple has positioned itself to become an interoperability layer in CBDC ecosystems, having already executed pilots with Bhutan and Palau. As global privacy expectations tighten, XRP's role as a bridge asset becomes even more relevant. This brings us to the final point. December 15th may one day be seen as a turning point, the moment that U.S. shifted from vague crypto oversight to structured governance. It's not the end of privacy, nor is it the beginning of oppressive control. It's the standardization phase that every maturing financial system eventually goes through. And as long as we understand how these rules shape liquidity, institutional behavior, and global adoption, we can position ourselves far ahead of the rest of the market. Bitcoin adapts, Solana adjusts, XRP benefits, and 2025 becomes the year when crypto stops being a wild frontier and becomes a recognized pillar of the global financial system.